Well, welcome back to Stephen Time. This afternoon, or today as it is, I want to take you on a walk which has become a particular favourite of ours since we've lived in Ipswich. It's a walk we do quite regularly down to the waterfront. Ipswich is a place we've come to know as home and come to like living in. Lots of things to do and see, lots of history, lots of places to go. This afternoon I'm just going to show you something of the kind of places we go to on a regular basis. I now move to the gate which was behind me. This is known as the Bishop's Hill Gate, and you can see the words Bishop's Hill clearly in the brickwork across the road, and I focus in on that shortly. There we go. Hill and Bishop's. Bishop's Hill. The reason this is called Bishop's Hill is because in the 12th or 13th century, Holywells Park, which is back there, had a house which was one of the houses that the Bishop of Norwich used to come to seek rest when he was in this area, and so this must have been one of the ways into the park or grounds of what was the Bishop's Palace in those days. Looking back towards the wall and the house is also one of note. It's one that belonged to one of the local families in the area, the Ransoms, who were agricultural engineers, and this house was built by them in the 1800s, and they offered much to Ipswich. It's just been sold, but is rather nice, I understand, and quite a large substantial property inside. So our walk now is going to take us down into the town that way and down the road. It's quite a busy road, so I hope my speech is being picked up okay. But as I say, this road is one of the main feeder roads into the town itself. As you get down here, in the past, this particular access to Ipswich was one that was full of history, and I'll just focus in. The buildings on the right there, where the white roofs is, that was, according to the old maps, that was where there was brick kilns and a brickworks, and although you can't see it from this angle, on the left hand side, just across the road and further down, there was the old ironworks. I believe it was the what was known as the Orwell Works, and those were around for many years and have only really recently, I understand, been used for domestic housing. So we're going to carry on walking down here, and I'll pick up shortly past the traffic lights in the distance. Across the road, as I've moved further down the hill, is this building here, which is the next thing I'd like to bring to your attention. As you can see, it's got an old church architecture in front of it, and I'm going to cross over shortly and I'll give you a bit more background and information about this building. So I've now crossed the road and come to what is the side angle of the building. You can see how it looks church-like, even though it's been converted now into residential property, which seems to be the way of many Victorian buildings these days. But good to see that they kept the character of the building in place. The building was built by another of the local families of Ipswich, a family called the Grimwades. Now the Grimwades were shop owners in the town in the 1800s, and were very successful. And along with that and some of the other things they did, became quite wealthy and were good benefactors to the town itself. And this is one of the buildings they gave to the town, or built for the town. It was a church. They were people with a strong faith, and I believe it was built somewhere around about 1860. Shortly after being built, it was known as a meeting house, and the congregation outgrew it, and so they extended. And as you move across now, there's a pelican crossing there. There's another old building in the distance here, and I'll just focus in on that a bit more. And that was the church they built following the outgrowing of the premises across the road. Sadly, this building itself now is also up for sale, as you can see, suitable for residential use, and big proud structure. I believe that was built some 10 or 20 years after the original meeting house. Now if I rotate the camera back from the meeting house across the road, you'll see that there are some kind of Tudor effect houses across the road, and these are some of the houses along this street that date back to the 16th century. Don't know much about these particular houses, but as you can see, they are very old and are used for different purposes now, including retail. Next to them stands part of the new university campus for the University of Suffolk, which is based largely in and around Ipswich. We're now going to move down the road, further down there, more into the town, and I'll catch you up shortly down there. So we come to St Clement's Church Lane, which is across the road from a rather interesting house. This was an old merchant's house, which dates back again to the 15th, 16th century. There is a date at the top there, but I don't think that's the old original date of 1639. I don't know whether you could pick that up between those two windows. 1639. And then just further down to the right is a rather interesting drawing, plaque painting on the wall. Not sure what that represents, but something of relevance and importance, I'm sure. Move along here to the window there. You can just now see a blue plaque. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus in on the blue plaque, and in memory of Edith Maud Cook. She was the first woman to pilot, a British woman to pilot an aircraft, and was quite an adventurer. She was a king parachutist. I believe she did over 100 parachute drops. Now, I'm not sure what parachute technology was like in those days, but sadly parachuting was to lead to her early death. She died, I believe, shortly after she'd done her maiden flight in 1910, and she died doing a parachute jump somewhere near Coventry when the parachute got entangled, and she died later in that week, a few days after, of her injuries. But a very brave woman and worthy of a blue plaque within the town and remembering of it. So we move on now from where Edith was born, along the road into the town. Again, more old housing on the left, dating back again to the 1600s or thereabouts. So I'm going to pause at this point and tell you something about the building across the road over there. Known as Isaac Lord, it's what is now a restaurant and bar complex. Very nice too. But as you can see, the buildings date back many years to the recent times when it was converted into its current use. And all these houses here, I understand, were merchant houses, shops and the like, which backed onto, you'll see in a minute, or fronted onto rather, the quayside and the docks, which we're going to walk to shortly as we go around, continue around the road into Ipswich. We'll see the front of Isaac's as part of the tour. So we walk further along now and come to the back of the old Cranfield Mill. That's that building there, as well as the one in the distance in the front. Path now continues down here past the churches and comes to a very busy junction in the centre of the town. This particular path leads us into the quayside, the port, the dock area, whichever word you prefer. It's been upgraded in the recent past and is now a very popular area for people to spend leisure time, but also for people to live in. The buildings that were there, the old mills and whatnot, have been transformed into lovely housing residential areas and are very popular in an area which has become known as the Waterfront. And so we just come here now, turn around to our left, and you start to see the waterfront area. We cross this road and we come to St. Peter's Wharf, and in the relative past this was a bustling area of industry and business and commerce. The boats sailed up the Orwell from the North Sea, were able to dock in this area and offload and take on cargoes which were bound for many places around the world. So I stand now at the beginning of what is the proper waterfront complex at a place which is known as Albion Wharf. I'm turning around because there's a sign that reminds me of the name of it there. This area in the olden days, as I've said already, was a bustling location of busy industrial use. Interestingly, at one time there was a railway track which ran all along the quayside behind me. Here, the railway station is situated the way I'm looking behind the camera, and so the you can imagine how busy it was in this area, this port area of the town. I think we may be in for a treat. Where those bubbles are in the water in the distance, we seem to have two resident otters. There they are in the distance there, two resident otters in the this area of Ipswich in the waterfront, and there they are bobbing their heads up, just come out to say hello. How privileged we are, and how beautiful that sight. You wouldn't believe that they were in what was an old dock area in the centre of Ipswich. Magnificent and great to see. Well, I'm back now back on looking at the buildings in the area after the excitement of the otters in the quayside there. This is what the old custom house of Ipswich, and I believe this was the second custom house. This one dates back a couple of 100 years or so, but there was an original one that stood here for a much longer time than that. It's quite a magnificent building, but today is used mainly for office purposes. You can see the impressive roof there. And here we have one of the boats in the front. These boats are used for pleasure cruises, and you can hire them out and go as a group or whatever and see some of the wildlife in the local estuaries, birds by barge. The one beyond that is a restaurant, and sadly hasn't been able to be used since we got here, as most of the time we seem to have been in lockdown, but this looks quite a nice venue when times are different to come and enjoy a meal. This is now the front aspect of Isaac's, which I spoke of earlier. It's a restaurant bar complex, and is very popular in less strange times. It has a malt kiln which dates back to well, many years ago, as it says on the plaque up in the distance there. It's part of a Tudor merchant's premises on on 4th Street. It's quite a vast complex now, this, and entertains many people when it's able to. We'll continue walking along the front, past the yachts, and head towards the marina in the distance. So the walk has brought us round now to the other end of the waterfront, quayside, whatever you want to call it, and we're looking back now towards the area where I was just earlier, the customs house in the distance, moving around to the old warehouses over there beyond the boats. On the left is another of the local industries, Fairline Boat Builders. I believe they produce some pretty impressive luxury yachts, and that, I believe, is one of their products in the distance. Very nice. The walk carries on to what they don't like calling the place docks now. They call it the port of Ipswich, and you can see in the distance the cranes from the port, and we're going to head that way, although we're not actually going into the port on this particular day. This boat here is interesting. It's an old Thames barge called Will, and Will seems to sail from Malden, which for our friends in that area will be of great interest. Malden was where we lived prior to moving to Ipswich, and the quayside there is also a very interesting area to explore, and not quite sure why Will's here at the moment. The other day there were a few paintbrushes and things out, so perhaps he's undergoing some restoration and tidying up in time for the new season when things are allowed to open up again. Move around now to moving into the dock area, or the port as I should say, and you see moorings here on the left, inaccessible now, presumably closed, but more cranes and other structures representing or necessary for a busy port, as Ipswich is now, or continues to be. I believe, from what I've seen, Ipswich has been a port for many centuries. Looking back once again towards the town and from where I've just walked, across the other side of the river, and back on there leads up to the Orwell and out ultimately into the North Sea. Well, we're going to walk on up here now to the trees in the distance, which is the bottom of the park. It's an area which to me represents the new on my left, new premises, new residential blocks, housing and the like, and the old on the right, where the port and all the old infrastructure that belongs to that is. So I'll join you again shortly when we get up into the park. Well, I've walked up the road, as I said I would, and come now to another entrance for Holywells Park, the Myrtle Road entrance. And here there's an interesting plaque which tells you a bit about the park. Perhaps we'll do an explore at some time of the park, and I'll give you some history about it. It tells you how the park was presented to the borough of Ipswich, as it was in those days, in September 1935 by Lord Woodbridge, and then opened up to the public in May 1936, and a very generous act by the family to give the park to the town, and it's something that's been appreciated here, I know, and is a well-used amenity. So we've almost done a full circle now from the beginning of the park at the Bishop's Road entrance down to the Myrtle Road entrance down here, and I hope you've enjoyed our walk along through the town initially, or some of the landmarks in the town, down to the waterfront, along the waterfront and back to the park. This is one of a number of videos I hope to produce over the next few months. Some will be based in Ipswich, where we reside of course due to the ongoing situation, but we then hope to be off on our travels in mid to late April, and we'll bring them from further afield then. I hope you've enjoyed sharing some Stephen time with me. I thank you for doing that. Please like, subscribe and click that notification button so that you'll get to know when I produce my next video. Doing that doesn't cost anything, it's a free thing from YouTube, so please don't be worried about that. Once again, thank you and stay safe. See you next time.